Just fucking do it. Subscribe now. The millions and even tens of millions of fees to go public. And it cuts the time frame. To go public takes a year, year and a half. And you can do a placing on an exchange or a SPAC in a few months. And the cost is significantly less. But let's start with the IPO. There's rules and regulations. You can't just willy-nilly think that you're going to ride off into the sunset because you take your company public. Let's say your market cap is $1 billion. In other words, all the shares that are in the public domain are worth $1 billion. And let's say after the public offering, normally you're selling 10 to 20% to the public. So for $1 billion market cap, you're selling 100 million to 200 million to the public to buy. Mom and pop shareholders with some institutional shareholders. And let's say that after dilution of 20% and you had 60, so now you're below 50. You're in the high 40s. Okay. You can't just, you will only be able to sell. First of all, they don't want founders to sell any stock. So you're going to have some asshole from Goldman Sachs or some prick from JP Morgan telling you, that's all great, but we want you to keep all your stock. And just by the look on your face, you didn't like that. Well, I didn't like it either. But so you need a plan. That's why you interview investment banks and you pick the one that you're going to cut the best deal with. But they will want you to sell next to no shares. They may allow some of the other directors to sell shares, but they fucking certainly don't want you. And you're never going to sell a big chunk. So you might be able to, on an initial public offering, sell 10% of your shares. 10% of your shares will be the first time on an IPO that you can hit the cash register. 10% of your shares. Now, no, you will have in your agreement, your management agreement with your other directors, you should have if I sell 10% of my shares, the other directors are going to want to sell 10% of their shares. It's called pari passu, Latin for pro rata, which is also Latin, but they'll sell the same amount percentage, they'll sell at the same time. So let's say the founding directors, you and the founding directors are selling 10% of your shares. So you have, after dilution, 50%, and the board has 25%. You're going to be selling, a minority. But every time you sell shares, you're diluting. When you go public, you're being diluted. And the magic number, it's very difficult to stay with a majority of over 50% when you go public. It's very difficult under the QLA model because you will have been diluted every time you give shares to one of the directors. But right now, the flavor of the day is direct listings without going through the IPO and SPACs. These special purpose vehicles, I mean, there's tons of them now. Tons of them. Which normally means we're at the top of a market. When the cab drivers, now this is an exaggeration, when the fucking cab driver can go public, the system wasn't designed for a fucking cab driver or a shoe shine boy to go public. So we're towards that end of the continuum. We're towards the top of the market. But I mean, the bull market lasted 11 years. It'll be the shortest recession, supposedly, in history. And the market has seemed to have recovered. Until now, they say, even though they said there was a possibility of a second wave, third wave, but the market is not reacting well to the fact that there is a distinct possibility that we're in the second wave and there may be a third and a fourth wave going into the fall when this virus is supposed to spread the most. Now, but as long as you have on the back of your legend and in your documents that you can, remember I said earlier, you can hypothecate, leverage your shares, you can still live large, like some of you I know want to. But when you borrow against the shares, you need to have board approval. So but you're going to have that all in the documentation. You don't want to have to go back to the board. The least you go back to the board, the better. So you want the documentation when you incorporate all encompassing every, if there's 28 days in June and the sun doesn't come, I mean, you want to cover every possible permutation. Because when everybody's in love and everybody agrees to everything. But as soon as you start hitting speed bumps, and God forbid you start getting bad publicity, then the board members start to cover their own butts. And as they should, they're there to govern and protect the shareholders. In the beginning, they're protecting you because you're far and away the biggest shareholder. But there's a time when that changes. And now with corporate governance the way it is, I mean, people are afraid of getting sued. And as I told you, over 40% of the outside directors, non-executive directors in the United States in 2000, I think it was 2018, got sued. Got sued. And in America, they're very litigious. I mean, they're less sue happy here. In the different parts of the world, they're less sue happy. But in America, I mean, you know, you can always get some crackpot lawyer that'll take it on the come and hoping that they get bought off because the small lawyers who take a lot of these cases don't have the staying power to fight a case out for weeks or months or even years. So they're hoping that you settle with them. Settle with them. Okay, so that, I mean, there's no magic rules. Money that you're not going to pay dividends. You're going to pay just bonuses. So you may get stuck with a 1 or 2 or 3% of your company that is held by a dissident director, former director that you threw out, but you didn't get his shares back. But ultimately, they'll sell out because, you know, they're never going to make any money unless you pay a dividend. And if you never pay a dividend, then they're never going to make any money. So they're pretty easy to buy out on pennies on the dollars. And I've never seen them not sell out. Once in a while, you'll get a guy or a gal that is a holdout, and they'll keep their shares, and that's fine. Then, once you're public, they can sell their shares in the open market like anybody else. And then it doesn't cost you anything because they're selling that 1% or 2% of shares to an independent shareholder in the open market, and that's no skin off your nose. So, I mean, there's no special magic about holding company. It's called a holding company, NewCo, because it will hold 1, 2, 3, 4, 25 or 30 companies ultimately. Yes, sir.
These other smaller companies, we're talking about subsidiaries.
Okay, no. The subsidiaries are the companies he bought. Like all the companies that Thomas bought are majority owned by the big company that he is the largest shareholder in. Legally, they are subsidiaries, but they're not set up as subsidiaries because they're already in existence. And as he pointed out, these companies that he bought have their own boards, have their own executive and non-executive directors that have nothing to do with the big company. Yeah.
Mr. Peña, on another subject, Marcus Bauer. What's his business model? Can you elaborate on that, please?
With who?
Marcus Bauer.
Oh yeah, Marcus Bauer. Okay. He buys. He started with general real estate, buying up brokers, etc., and consolidate. Then he bought up developers, and he consolidated. And now he's gone to the base of a developer's portfolio, buying up raw land, and then having planning permission, etc., for it, and then waiting for that planning permission, and then either selling off to another developer that will pay for the fact that you got it all prepped for the development, or he will develop it himself. And then in part of his portfolio, and it depends on this market cycle, he keeps until the market is hot for him to sell the units. When he's building units and houses, he sells into a hot market. If the market dries up, like the market has temporarily dried up because of COVID, he keeps the houses in his own portfolio, and in some cases, he rents them out. But the renting business is another business. It's a pain in the ass business because then you got to deal with tenants, and dealing with tenants can be a lot of problems. That's his model. Yes?
So the subsidiaries we buy with the main company, but these are bought through the new smaller companies, correct?
No, he's calling them subsidiaries, but they're the companies he's purchased. They are They are subsidiaries to the mother company that holds all the 100% interest. He didn't set them up as subsidiaries. They were all in existence when he bought them. Yes, sir. Employee stock option. Okay. Gates, not all, but almost all the big companies have option plans. Okay. Now, we're giving directors free founders equity. But like 60% of Facebook employees, once they're there a year, and 60 or 70% of Microsoft employees, once they were there a year and hired, and part of their compensation package is they get some amount of share options equal to or greater than, let's say, $100,000 a year guy or gal at Microsoft gets $7,500 in cash bonus a year. That's if they're good and they meet the requirements, etc. And they get $7,500 in options. Okay, and the options they give, there's an option pool Microsoft has, and it's called an employee stock option. And let's say that 15% of Microsoft, I don't know the numbers, I'm making these up, 15% of Microsoft is in the option plan for the employees. And then they divvy that out. And depending on what the share price is when they're divvied out, and they're normally given out the year end, which is coming up. And let's just say that I don't know what the share price is. Let's just say it's $100 a share. I don't know what it is. Okay, so, and the striking price on the day that you were issued the option, this is the employee, the regular employee, you get 100 shares at $100 a share. That's the valuation. Then you stay there 5, 10, 15 years, and the share price goes from 100 to 1,000. Your gain is the difference between the 100, the striking price, and the 1,000, which you may exercise at. But you can exercise at any time from the striking price, $100 a share, through, like some of these stocks are at $2,000, $3,000 a share, you would exercise. But that's a taxable event. So you have to pay for the shares at 100, and normally the big companies, like Microsoft and me in the old days, the company would loan you the money to buy the shares, and it would be a simultaneous transaction. On Monday, you would exercise the shares and get the shares, and the difference between the $100 a share that it was exercised and you paid through the borrowed money from the company, and the 1,000 or $900 would be your gain that you could pocket, but you pay taxes on. You pay taxes on. Now, when you get your free founders equity, your stock basis, share basis is zero because they're giving it to you. Okay? So you don't have to put up any money. You just get a share certificate. And then if using the Microsoft example, when you sold the shares at 1,000, the whole gain from 0 to 1,000 is yours, as opposed with a stock option, if you were exercised at $100, the only gain you would have would be the difference between 100 and 1,000, which would be 900. So the two main differences, one, for a stock option you got to pay for, but most big companies loan you the money. And if you have stock options in Facebook or Microsoft, you can go to the bank with your certificate, and even if the company doesn't want to loan you the money, and you can borrow on a short term the money so you can exercise the options and sell them. There's no need to exercise options unless you're going to sell, because it's taxable. So you will sell, and then depending on how you pay taxes, quarterly, whatever, and then pay the tax on them. But both systems are great, and it's key. I mean, some of the people I used to know, the head of human resources for IBM, And when he retired after 38 years with IBM, legend had it, and this guy was a good friend of Bruce the Whipple. He never sold a share of IBM in the 38 years he was there. And when he did exercise and sell out his stock, he had 80 or 90 million bucks with IBM stock. And a lot of people in the old days would supplement whatever their pension was. And in those days, they actually had pensions. And so you know, 40 years and you walk away with 75 million bucks, in addition to whatever your pension was worth, 2, 3, 4 million bucks. You know, they were nice packages. But, and he got a big platinum watch, but those days are gone. Those days are gone. Yes, sir.
So for the acquisitions at the beginning, do you recommend like consolidation versus like complementary like businesses?
No, I like consolidation of the same business. You're talking about bolting on complementary and supplementary businesses, or they're really different than your vertical. Don't confuse the issue. It's going to be hard enough for you to do just one thing. You know, when you've got 20 companies. It's like Anelli said that he was in the construction business, and the things that were complementary and supplementary to it. Like he got into painting, he got into carpentry, he got this, that. But he's been doing this 18, 19 years. Okay? And so I don't recommend, because then not all of your industry experts are going to be familiar with all these different aspects of it. You know, I know guys that have worked for big construction companies. The only thing they ever did was planning permission. 35 years at the company, all they did was planning permission. They don't know anything about carpentry or any of the other stuff. You know, I know guys that have worked for in the automotive, and all they spent 25 years in a wind tunnel. You know, for the coefficient of friction and how the wind goes over the. Yeah, so I mean. That's not much of an industry expert. What you want is a guy that was VP or senior VP of manufacturing for automobiles, because there's a lot of different aspects of manufacturing automobiles.
But in that case, in high tech, how can you do that? Because high tech, for example, it would be one, let's say, for example, customer relationship management system, technology. I mean, what could you buy?
Well, I would just buy companies that did that. Just get your. I mean, you know. I know there's a lot of things in a day, but I mean, you're asking questions that never happen. I mean, every seminar, at least one of you asked a question I never thought of in 50 years, and if I never thought of it in 50 years, it's because it never happened. It never happened. I mean, there's stuff. I mean, you're worrying about now. I'm looking at my gambler friend here. I don't know what the odds are for a royal flush. I don't know what they are. I used to be, if I do say so myself, a pretty heavy-duty gambler back in my heyday when I was shitting money, and I used to love the poker, and I used to fancy myself when I used to sit around with all the Asian boys back in the back room at the casinos, a pretty good player. But I used to ask the guys, how many times have you ever seen a royal flush? Never. 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 Day after day at the tables. Never. Now I've seen them on TV, James Bond and shit like that, but I never touched a person or talked to anybody that's ever had one. Huh? Oh, well, God bless you. Because I used to play a lot and I never got one. I knew I drew and gambled and bluffed a couple times like I was going to get it, but fuck, I didn't get it. And so you're asking things that are, you know, 1 in a billion or 1 in 100 million. They don't happen. They don't happen. They don't happen. Yes, sir.
So for your first board meeting.
First board meeting. Is his voice going up, or am I getting deaf? I mean, before we couldn't even fucking hear you. And now, I mean, you're blowing the eardrums out of everybody. Okay.
So precisely, what do you discuss during the first board meeting?
They're going to discuss how they get rid of you. They're going to discuss how do we get rid of this slime ball, you know. Remember, and you have this, where's that thing? You're going to get that, It's all in here. Can you read English? Is that yes? I can read English? Yes, sir. Okay. It's all in here. It's all in here. Can you read English? Punjab asshole. Okay. So the first board meeting agenda is you're going to ask permission for these companies that you're presenting LOIs with, whether to go after them. Remember, in Andres' case, he had 5. We decided on 4. Some of the guys, and so you're not bringing willy-nilly acquisition candidates to the goddamn board meeting. First of all, then they will know that they ought to get rid of you. I mean, when you bring shit to the table, but you're asking the industry experts, what do you think about it? You're asking the CFO, you're asking the CEO, you're asking the chairman. And they'll tell you, they say, no, I pass on that, that's not worth bringing to the board. Or occasionally, if the board will be embarrassed to look at that. But the deals aren't perfect. A lot of the board members are going to want the deal's got to be perfect. Our first few deals have to be perfect. No. The first few deals have to get done. You can worry about perfection later on. You just want to get it done. Like I tell people, the worst piece of ass I ever had was good. The worst one I ever had was pretty fucking good. So you want to get a deal done. You want to get a deal done. And yes, sir.
Just wanted to fall back whenever you were talking about structuring the going public.
Yes, sir.
And I'm assuming you structure the company initially from the get-go to go public, whether you're planning on it or not, correct? You are setting up as if you are absolutely going to go public. Because if you cross all the T's and dot all the I's for a public offering, you can do a SPAC and you can do a direct listings. Plus, when you're ready to exit, and if the market's right and you've only made 18 or 19 acquisitions, and a private equity company comes and you've been buying stuff at 5 times EBITDA, and they offer you 12 times EBITDA, you hit the cash register. That's an arbitrage. That means you made 7 times more money, or you 1.25 times your money, and it can be a few weeks. As you heard Andres say, he's already been approached by private equity came to him. And private equity, the hospital guy, Peter, of course, he's been on the front page of the newspapers and Forbes and all. He's inundated by people wanting to buy. Because the bigger players, the whales, will pay you at least twice your money just for doing the grunt work of buying stuff at 3 to 5, and they'll pay you 10 to 12 to 13. And of course, then they put it into a bigger group, and then they take it public at 18, 20. And then you get seller's remorse. Why in the fuck did I sell to those pricks for 12? Don't worry about it. You paid 5 and they paid you 12, that's fine. Correct? You take the money and run like a black thief in the night, like that boy right there. What?
Can I sell the board on that? Like, I'm going to build a portfolio with 25, and then I'm going to exit. Like, is that a good thing to have?
No. Well, no. You're going to tell the board, and it's in the material, that you're going to let the market dictate when you leave. You let the market. And they'll all understand that. And hopefully we're going to sell in an up market. But I've exited in a down market for the right price. For the right price. They'll understand. All the board members, especially you, kid, are going to be infinitely more sophisticated than you. They will have forgot more about this game than you're going to know. But that's why they're there. But the other side of it is, if they're so fucking smart, how come they haven't done it? Because they haven't had the energy, the balls, blah, 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 blah. And it's pardon? Oh, well, yeah, well, some of them have. And most of them now that are, the oldest guy in this room is probably going to be your youngest director. The oldest guy in this room, which I think is 57. Okay? He will be at the young end of the continuum for directors. Okay? So they're going to be aged from his age to my age, 57 to 75. And they, you know, there's a lot of scar tissue on us. And they will have known. And a lot of these things that I just say in one-line throwaways, they will have bled. They will, you know, I remember the time, especially when you're having drinks after your first board, you know, they all start swapping horror stories about how they got fucked. And this guy stole from me and this, that, and the other. And so, and then once in a while, oh, you knew him too? He got in your knickers as well? And so, yeah, so these guys, but you got to ask them. Now, just by looking at you, they're going to know you're naive, young, and guess what? They're going to know you're black as well. Yeah, there's not. There's not much choice. I mean, unless they're fucking colorblind, and you can't be that colorblind that they can't see that this young man is black. Okay, but they're there to help. 99% of these guys are there to help. Once in a while, you get an asshole. So the real challenge is to get rid of the assholes as soon as humanly possible. Because good news doesn't travel fast. Bad news travels faster. And they can put negative thought process in your board members' minds faster than anything. I mean, one bad phone call, one bad Skype, one bad tweet. And, you know, they can do away. It takes you 5 or 10 or 20 years to build up a great reputation. It takes one mistake to fuck it up. One mistake to fuck it up. And you see that in the news all the time. Guys that, you know, had pristine careers down the toilet were just one stupid thing. And I've seen a lot of the kids over the years crash and burn because of that. But remember, the two biggest mistakes the kids make, they don't pay taxes and they commit bank fraud inadvertently. Just make sure all the papers you sign are true. Are true. And there was somebody's hand. Yes, sir.
Offshore limited companies.
You know what I mean? Is that what you're asking me? Is that what you're really asking me?
No.
Yeah? You can have offshore, but it's tough to take an offshore company public.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay. Well, now, if you're going to take it public, no. And strategics don't want to buy offshore companies because they realize, depending where they're offshore, there may or may not be a good rule of law. And believe me, these guys realize that litigation is a business tool, and so they're going to want to make sure that the platform is level at least, and it's not tilted one way against you. Okay, guys, who's my 5:30? 6? Tonight, I mean, you know it all now. Now you got to pull the trigger, okay? And don't get ahead of yourself. One step at a time. And as the young high school kid put it very well, not to get ahead of yourself and just focus on the one step and then the next step and the next step. You're going to get an email from Thelma that's going to say something to the words effect, congratulations, bullshit. And here are the other links that aren't on the gig. Don't lose your gig. We don't give them a second time. Back it up or however you do. I don't know how to do that, but whatever you know how to do it. Okay, already. Now, have you backed yours up yet? Okay. I want to believe you. He's like the bastard black kid I never wanted. You know what I mean? You know? Yeah. I mean, I don't need any more kids. I don't need any more. Guys, thank you very much. Good night. Thank you.